Penn State fans, the blue-white breakdown is back. Bob Flounders joined by Max Ralph. You can either listen to us or look at our handsome faces wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, a bunch of other places. Max, you probably know some. I just know Spotify. That's where I go, but that's just me. But we're here to talk about a lot of stuff. It's late in the week. Big week for Penn State. They're traveling to Madison, play Wisconsin, resurgent Wisconsin. How resurgent they are, we're going to find out. They've won 3 in a row, haven't beaten anyone in those 3 games. Penn State fresh off a bye. Last time we saw them, Max, you and I were in Los Angeles for one of the better games I've ever seen covering Penn State. Just the way everything came together for their overtime win at USC. Huge game for them. But Max, you were also at practice on Wednesday. You got a chance to watch a little practice. You got to get a chance to talk to some players. So we're going to get to the preview, Max. We're going to get to our picks. But first of all, since I've already talked for 66 seconds and counting, how are you doing? Did you enjoy your bye week? And who did you get a chance to talk to? And what did you observe at Penn State practice?
Yeah, Bob, I'm going to top your 66 seconds. You teed me up for a long time here. I'm doing well. Happy to be on the blue-white breakdown this morning. Bye week was great. I went and spent some time in and around Baltimore with my girlfriends. That was fun. First time I've really spent any time in the city over there. And it also feels, you mentioned the USC game, it feels like a really long time ago. I don't know. It's not that long ago, but for some reason it feels like that happened a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, last night, yesterday, Wednesday was a pretty big day because in addition to the football practice that I was at, I also had basketball. So not sure how many of you listening in are avid Nittany Lion hoops fans, but I'll have some of that coming out here this week and through the season as well. I do like Mike Rhodes' team this year. I think they'll be interesting to watch. I'm not going to come out and say NCAA tournament or anything off the bat, but they're going to be interesting to watch. As far as football practice goes, a few notable things, a little bit on the shorter side of list of notes, but we saw a lot of freshmen who were in their regular uniforms this week. I took a list of a few of them. Xavier Gilliam at defensive tackle, and then pretty much almost all of the freshman defensive backs were in their usual numbers instead of scout team this week, which was really interesting. I mean, you had Vebu Torre, AJ Belgrave Shorter, John Mitchell, I'm not sure. He was in number 12, which is his number, but there is also a Wisconsin cornerback that wears number 12. So not positive, but he was in his normal number. So, you can take that one way or another. And then the others, there were a few others that have been up and down with that we saw. Max Granville, Jalen Harvey. Harvey is a more notable one. Granville's done it a few times, but Harvey having that designation is a little more recent and a little more noteworthy. And James Franklin kind of went out of his way to mention Harvey and Granville on Monday and say, he was actually answering a question about how he was going to handle Quentin Martin and Corey Smith. But he ended up bringing up Jalen Harvey and Max Granville and saying, hey, those two guys could kind of flip-flop so that we preserve both of their red shirts, which is a noteworthy thing to say because it probably means Harvey has made a huge jump in the past couple weeks, enough to where the staff is comfortable playing him. So that's worth noting. And then the only other thing that I really had was, speaking of Quentin Martin, he wasn't out there, which Bob is a pretty big deal because he's the number 3 running back right now. And he's talented. There's been a lot of talk about how Penn State could use him down the stretch and what they could do with him versus Corey Smith, the other freshman. Are they going to preserve both red shirts? Are they going to burn Quentin's? It could go a lot of different ways, but I still saw Corey out there in a scout team uniform. So I'm not really sure. It's hard to say. We haven't heard anything about Quentin, so we'll see. We'll see what that looks like come Saturday. But there's been the most noteworthy thing was the freshman to me who made the jump from scout team to regular uniforms. Because one more thing, James Franklin did say afterward that they've had a lot of freshmen make jumps that has kind of changed their depth so far this year, because he was asked about their general health and where they're at right now. And he said, yeah, I mean, we're banged up early on, but we've had a lot of these freshmen kind of step up. And he also mentioned a guy like Dakari Nelson, who is just in his second year, but made that position switch. So interesting. I think we could see some more freshmen down the stretch.
All right, Max. I was hanging. I listened to everything you said because you started with you were going to top 66 seconds. You did that. You lapped me.
Mhm.
But I just wanted to circle back to two things for our listeners. Just
Sure.
because we're trying to get to know you a little bit better. You've only been on the beat for a couple of months. So my two things are: when you went to Baltimore, did you get a chance to go to Fells Point?
Yeah, that's where I spent all my time. Actually,
That's
she's
where you should
actually
always spend all your time in Baltimore.
she's actually in the Towson area, but we spent all of Saturday downtown, and we went to the aquarium first, and then spent the evening on Fells Point. So it was pretty cool.
And just a quick follow up to I'm not putting you on the spot. Is your girlfriend a regular listener or watcher of the Blue White Breakdown?
Sometimes,
Okay.
not sometimes.
Hey, I'll take
Yeah,
that's better than nothing. It's better than nothing. We'll take all the audience you can get.
I think she's just used to whenever she sees me hearing all of this in person. So the podcasts are
Okay.
just secondary for her.
That's fair. That is fair. I just wanted to follow up on a couple of things. So Max, we've been through the your practice observations. Let's just get into it because this is a big game, right? Wisconsin, don't want to say they're a completely different team from the one that got walloped at home by Alabama and only really played a solid half at USC and then kind of fell apart. They're on a nice little run in the Big Ten, but the big thing perception wise is what do you make of the 3-game winning streak, a lopsided winning streak when they play Purdue, a Rutgers team that is fading fast, and then a Northwestern team that is just not. I mean, they're scrappy, but there's not a lot of talent there. They killed all those teams. They've won easily. The running game looks like it's back. They're playing good defense, but it's really hard to figure out. It's really hard to figure out have they made a big stride or have they just not played anyone?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of the cop-out answer to say we're going to find out this weekend because Penn State's.
We're going to make our picks, and I think with certitude, one way or the other, we're going to know.
No, you're right. It's interesting because the Big Ten outside of your Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State this year has just been kind of weird and hard to predict.
Indiana, Max.
Oh, and Indiana. Yep, you're right. Sorry, don't want to forget.
Yeah,
Signetti and the
Hoosiers. Listening to this, he's going to get kicked at you. Don't do it.
It's bulletin board material. I'm sure he's searching for it everywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, outside of those top four, it's been really hard to predict because you mentioned Northwestern, but of course they went and blew out Maryland on the road, and then Maryland beat USC in a fourth quarter comeback. So it's weird. It's hard to predict, but I do think that you have to be encouraged if you're a Wisconsin fan that they did blow these teams out in the fashion they did. I mean, obviously, they're not good teams, but there's still something to be said about winning in that fashion. So I do think that this Wisconsin game is going to be a challenge for Penn State. I have my concerns about their roster and their scheme and everything, and we'll get to it. But I do think that bottom line is Penn State's going to have a hard time this weekend. They're going to have to play well.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. I just think it's also it's not funny, but it's Luke Fickell comes in. They make a big deal about kind of playing 21st century football, maybe getting away from being just so predictable and just trying to wear teams out physically at the line of scrimmage with big running backs who get 39 carries a game, stuff like that. But they tried that last year. Didn't go too well. I think we'll never really know if they would have turned a corner because the quarterback from Miami got hurt. I think the ACL. Yeah, is it Tyler Van Dyke got hurt in the Alabama game? So, I mean, when that happens, you got to go to a plan B. And they still have a lot of big athletes in their system to play smash mouth football, and they got a real nice running back. I think an Oklahoma transfer. Tawee Walker, I don't want to mispronounce his first name, but you look at his numbers, Max, they look like a classic, traditional Wisconsin feature back numbers. So it is what it is, but it's funny to me that they've had to resort to something they really were trying to turn the page on to stay competitive this year. But I give them credit for doing it. I mean, they could have packed it in after the USC loss, and it could have just been, they could have been life or death to have a winning record. But I think they've shown improvement. Fickle has shown he can develop teams and he did wonders at Cincinnati. But you're right? So my thing is this: the only two teams this year. This is the preview section, Penn State fans. The only two teams this year that really caused problems for Penn State, really caused problems for them, were Bowling Green and Lincoln and USC and Lincoln Riley. And they were balanced offenses that Penn State had to worry about because of the play callers, because of some wideouts or some running backs. But when they faced one-dimensional offenses, and I would almost include Illinois as a one-dimensional offense because Luke Altmaier has never played well against Penn State. They kind of had their number, and if Penn State knows what's coming with their athletes, it's really hard, I think, for the opposition to score points. Now, Madison is going to be rocking Wisconsin. This is a game that could turn their season completely around. I get that. It's a little bit similar to USC, but not as crazy of an environment. But I'm just wondering if Penn State says, "Hey, we're gonna do everything we can to limit their running game, and we're gonna make this quarterback. We're gonna defy this quarterback to beat us." I'm not sure if Penn State protects the football that can happen.
Yeah, I'm with you. When I was going through the stats, I mean, you mentioned Walker. He definitely jumps off the page. They went into the season with Ches Malusi as the lead guy, who seems like he's been there forever now.
Yeah, I think he's 35, and he probably had to retire just because of old age.
Right. You might be right. The knees weren't going anymore.
Arthritis, probably.
But Walker kind of came out of nowhere, and then you look at what he's put on paper.
Yeah.
I think he's averaging over like 5.5 yards a carry. It's been really good. There was a great ESPN story in the preseason about what you mentioned with Luke Fickell and Phil Longo changing their philosophy this year, and it's just an interesting dynamic because through that whole Paul Chryst tenure where Wisconsin had a lot of success. Like it was smash mouth football. Like you said, like it was the same thing every year. You knew what you were getting and the fans loved it. And then Luke Fickell came in and then everybody's like freaking out. Right. And this year they've gotten back to it. I mean, they've run the ball 80 more times than they've thrown it. I mean, just a complete 180 from what they did last year. I think it's working out for them. When I was checking out those stats, the thing that kind of leapt off the page to me defensively for the Badgers is that they haven't made big plays on the defensive side of the ball, even in those big wins for them the past few weeks. They've only had 3 interceptions on the season. They've only sacked the quarterback 12 times. It's just I don't think they're a very disruptive defense. And with the level of care that we've seen Drew Aller have with the ball outside of that USC game, he had the 2 not very good interceptions. But through the bulk of his career and his season so far, Drew Aller has handled the ball really well and just been poised. And that's, I think, going to be a big X factor this weekend. I just don't see the Wisconsin defense being able to get the momentum-changing plays that it needs to beat a team when it's a big underdog against a top 3 team.
Yeah, they're well coordinated by Mike Tressel, who's done good things wherever he's been, whether I think he's the nephew of Jim Tressel, the former Ohio State coach, whether he was at Michigan State for a while, at Cincinnati with Luke Fickell. But you look at the stats and you're right. Not a disruptive defense, I think, is what I would say, whereas Penn State is a disruptive defense. They've only given up 1 play of more than 50 yards all season. That tells me, without watching all of their games, that they're pretty cautious on defense, right? They're trying to eliminate the big play. They're trying to make teams drive the ball on them, and that probably impacts whether they're going to blitz or whether they're going to get real disruptive. That would make sense, but it also means that if they get behind, they could be in a lot of trouble. The one thing I've noticed and I saw on their notes is it's not necessarily their defense you got to worry about. Their special teams, they're a little frisky. I think they blocked 2 punts and 2 field goals in the last couple of weeks. Not that I mean is something is a top priority for Penn State, but you do not want to get beaten badly in the kicking game if it's going to be close. So I'd be on the I'm sure they've gone over a lot of scenarios about whether it's extra points or field goals and blocking these guys, and also punt blocking as well.
Out of money, I know. What are you when you're rich as hell? We're going to give you tax cuts. We're going to pay you.
I am not rich as hell. I work hard. I scrape to get by. Donald Trump wants to give tax breaks to billionaires, but Kamala Harris has plans to help us. She's going to crack down on price gouging and cut taxes for working people like me. I voted for Donald Trump before, but this time I'm voting for Kamala.
I'm with you, Max. My question for you is, you mentioned Drew. What are 1 or 2 players on either side, or 1 or 2 matchups that you think will go a long way toward determining the outcome?
Yeah. Well, we always, in our weekly predictions, Bob, we do our players on the spot, and I just immediately thought Kobe King and Tony Rojas in that linebacking core for Penn State.
Yeah.
I think they're both really good players. I think Kobe is probably one of the most underrated linebackers in the country. He's a physical guy. He's great in the run. He's got he takes his lumps in the passing game, but he is solid in the run. And Tony's kind of the flip, right? Like, he's really good in the pass, is getting better in the run. He's obviously put a ton of weight on, but beyond those two, we've talked about it all season. That linebacking core is thin. So I think against a team that's going to run the ball a lot and try and win that way, they're going to have to play a lot of snaps, and they're going to have to play well. So those are the ones I'll point out there. On the offensive side, I mean, I do kind of think it's Nick Singleton this weekend. Wisconsin is going to try and stop the run. They've been good against the run so far this year too. And it's been a couple games now since Penn State had that dominant rushing attack against Illinois. Really, I mean, they struggled against UCLA and USC. So I do think we got to see a big one from Nick Singleton this weekend. I think that's going to go a long way to helping Penn State control the game on Saturday.
Yep. For me, the 2 players I'm going to be watching on offense, you alluded to it. Drew Aller, you look at his USC game, 391 yards total, 2 touchdown passes. That late drive when they absolutely had to have it, I think they were on their own 25 with about 5.5 minutes left. They needed to tie it up. I believe they're down. They were down, and he produced some magic. I think the interceptions. I think he knows that this is a game where there's no need to force anything. It would help if they don't get behind, but I think that what he did late in the fourth quarter supersedes those forced passes that he did early in the game. That to me was very telling. I've been waiting to see for 2 years Drew in a tight game produce that kind of drive. He got help obviously from Julian Fleming. I think that's a huge sign. And the other thing I would just say for the Penn State fans is, look, Wisconsin's going to run the ball. Jalen Reed, to me, you're going to see him living at the line of scrimmage. He has to. They couldn't afford to do that against USC because of the pass game. He played deep a lot, but when he did get a chance to play near the line of scrimmage, he made some huge plays. I think he's going to be huge in the run game and in run support, because I think if you're Penn State, you have to feel good about your corners maybe handling these Wisconsin wideouts one-on-one, whether it's in man or a little bit of off coverage. Zakee Wheatley can play deep. I think you need Jalen Reed involved in the run game, almost as a third linebacker. James talked about he's really been an outside linebacker when he's played close to the line of scrimmage. I think his role is going to be very impactful. And if you're seeing him deep in the game, I don't think that's where he wants to be. I think he's most effective when he's close to the line of scrimmage. Those 2 guys, I think Max, this is just a really compelling game. But my worry is that I've been to some games in Madison where Wisconsin's offense has just not shown up. Whether it was 2021 when Graham Mertz just stunk up the field and literally handed Penn State the game.
I
But
was at that
also,
one too, Bob.
there's been games before where Penn State has been in there and it was supposed to be a good game, but they knew what was coming and it really wasn't that close.
Mhm.
So the line is right around 6.5 or 7, Max. I think Penn State's going to cover this spread. I think the only scenario where they could get in trouble is turnovers, and combined with a slow start on offense. If they get a lead, though, this could get away from Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree. Your Jalen Reed point is a good one. I'd be curious to see if they give a little more trust to Dejan Lane in this game to play deep because of what Wisconsin is going to try to do on the ground. USC did exploit it a little bit when Jalen Reed was playing deep. I mean, Woody
Yes.
Marks had a huge day.
Yep.
So I'll be curious to see how that goes. You brought up the turnovers. I do think here's the thing: Braden Locke, ever since he took over from the injury to Tyler Van Dyke, he's gotten better. He's making good plays. James said it last night. They've tailored the offense around him a little bit. A lot of what they do is based off of play action because they set up that run game.
Yeah.
They try to take some deep shots. Jalen Kimber said they're going to be ready for it. But here's the thing: he's turned the ball over. He's got an interception, and I think every game since he's taken the field. And I do think Penn State is going to be opportunistic. I think they're going to have a little bit of that bend don't break that we've seen all season. They're going to give up some yards on the ground just because that's what Wisconsin wants to do. But they're going to make the plays when they need it. They're not going to give up a ton of points. And I think that Penn State's offense is going to. I don't think they're just going to light it up, but I do believe that they'll be able to control the tempo and kind of play this game how they want to.
All right, Max, score me. You go first. We better not have the exact same score again because that's the people are going to think we're cheating off each other's notes. So we can't have the exact same score. I have my fingers crossed. I think we both see the game pretty similarly, so there's a chance. But you go first.
I will preface this by saying the vibes were down a little bit at practice last night. There was a little bit of a lack of energy. Madison, only been there once. I know you love it there. Camp Randall was a little disappointing in my opinion in 2021, but that was a noon game.
Yeah,
it was 11 a.m. there.
A little bit different after the cocktails start flowing in these guys.
Exactly. So I hope for Penn State's sake that they are they're ready for what is going to be going on there at 6:30 Central. And I will say though, all that aside, I think from a pure on paper standpoint, I've got 34-20 Penn State. I think it's pretty comfortable. A late touchdown from Wisconsin makes it look a little closer, but really, I think Penn State is going to confuse Braden Locke on defense. I think they're going to control it on offense.
Max, I got good news for you. We did not pick the same score, but
Thank you.
But we almost have the exact same winning margin. And to me, that's the sign of us not copying off each other's notes, but also kind of aligned and seeing the game the same way here on the Blue-White Breakdown.
Yeah.
I don't think there'll be that many points. I picked 26-13. I do think special teams. I think there could be some long marches that are necessary, and I think that Wisconsin's defense knows that Andy is going to try and trick them, and they're going to try and line up so they're going to be hard to trick. But Andy's going to get them a couple of times. I don't know that they can get into the 30s. If they do, though, that'll be very impressive against this defense on the road. 26-13. So I'm also, I think, aligned with the under. You have it 34-20. Everyone, thank you for tuning in to watch and listen to this Blue-White Breakdown. We got to pretty soon get on a plane. Max, you're even flying out of Harrisburg.
I am.
We got to get out to Madison to cover the game. Look for Max's stuff, my stuff, Johnny McGonigal's stuff, Joe Herman's photos. Also, got to give Joe a shout out. But Max, good chatting with you, and guys, you'll be hearing plenty from us on PennLive out in Madison.